Part 17. Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 166. Fight, growl, roar, explode. Flames shot into the sky, roars of tearing, and crazy power crushed them repeatedly. Logo sat there silently, one finger trembling slightly. Even the delicious drink seemed unable to suppress this wonderful state of mind. Am I longing for it? Raising his head suddenly, what rushed into his eyes was the flames of the heat wave. I really want to go and feel its power. I really want to experience Blackbeard's attack again. But now, it's far from the time for them to be weak. Wait. The reason is constantly talking, but there is a wild beast in the heart, which is also roaring crazily. I don't know when there were two more people beside me. Dashiki and Mikita came back. Each of them was holding a person in their hands, Lester and Thunder, who were almost half dead. After a glance, Logo finally took a deep breath. Wait for me on the boat. Mishita was a little surprised. Captain, what are you doing? Dasaiki's eyes were burning with flames. Sharpening, is it a terrible sharpening? But this will definitely let your sword show its sharpness. I'm going to die. After Logo gritted his teeth and said this, the next second, he jumped off the boat. Seek death. Really irrational. Normally, any one of the two people in front of me should surpass him in terms of hard power. At least, if one regards combat power as a pure figure and throws it to the ground with a bang for comparison, then Logo's combat power is obviously less than theirs. Fortunately, not too much less. Therefore, after planning the scene in front of him, what Logo should do most is to sit firmly on the Diaotai, wait quietly for the end of this battle, and then rush out to catch the two people who have exhausted their mental and physical strength. Be a bounty in your own pocket. But at this moment, he suddenly found that he couldn't sit still at all. There were a few of Blackbeard's subordinates who could accompany him to play games and spend less boring time. But what about now? Two masters are fighting crazily, but I am sitting here drinking? He could even feel that Kuromaru was trembling and crying. A pirate hunter is a pirate hunter. But before he was a pirate hunter, he was a swordsman. The steps under my feet moved forward little by little, and something seemed to be spreading out invisibly. Faced with his arrival, the flames and darkness retreated, leaving a path full of misfortunes. A person, a knife, through the flames and darkness, forward. He went to the battlefield that should belong to him. To meet this battle, there should have been his battle. The crazy flames seemed to stop at some point, and the tumbling darkness seemed to calm down temporarily. They stopped. Logo raised his head, and there seemed to be a sword glow in his eyes. There was an indescribable energy brewing in the air, and when he took a step, he merged into it. In the next second, point your toes, and your figure is like a shuttle. Passing through many obstacles, when his footsteps fell, he was greeted with a burst of laughter. Thief, ha 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 ha. Blackbeard's iconic laughter rushed into his ears. Nalos Rogu. I knew that you were responsible for all this. Are you not hiding in the corner, waiting secretly? You said that you won't interfere in this battle. Ace also looked at Rogu. The remaining flames were burning all over his body, but his mood didn't seem to be angry because of Rogu's refusal, but instead he became extra hearty. However, at least don't worry, after exhausting all the strength to fight, there is a sneak attack from behind. We should have caught him at the very beginning. Blackbeard glanced at Ace, but this guy actually walked out on his own. The corner of Logo's mouth twitched. So, are you having a tea party here? The next second, Ryu's knife marks tore through the air and headed straight for Blackbeard. At the same time, a huge fireball condensed, accompanied by Ace's roar, Fire Fist. The two attacks rushed forward at the same time. Blackbeard roared, and the darkness condensed in his hands, and suddenly struck out fiercely. Boom boom boom. The sword energy scattered, the darkness collapsed, and the flames splashed. In just a moment, the surroundings were in chaos. Logogu's figure suddenly retreated. He was in mid-air, and with a backhand knife, the waning moon dragged the air wave directly towards Ace. But at this moment, the darkness that Blackbeard brewed rushed towards Logogu again. Once the battle between these three people started, it would be chaos. Both Blackbeard and Ace are Rogu's goals. Ace's goal is to capture Blackbeard and at the same time defeat Rogu, and Blackbeard will not let them go. Ace is now the only important bargaining chip for him to reach the top according to the original plan, and Rogu, the provocation of this hunter is also intolerable to him. So, fight? They were still besieging the same person 1 second, and the besieger will become the besieged the next second. It obviously only takes 1 second to cause serious damage to the person being attacked, but it happens to be cracked by another person at this second, and in turn, the person being attacked becomes himself. On the battlefield, the situation is changing every second. No one is alone, but everyone is alone, there is no partner, but everyone can temporarily help, always in a state of siege, but always in a state of siege. This kind of battle has almost reached the peak of personal physical and mental consumption. Logogu's sword power circulated crazily: cold moon, waning moon, crazy moon, eclipse moon. The four styles circulate and flow endlessly. In the sea of fire, in the darkness, cut through a ray of light. Sword marks, darkness, and flames can be seen everywhere on the ground, and a little power scattered in all directions will cause damage to this island. And this battle is far more difficult than imagined. Once the three people really fight, it is almost like a wheel, rolling back and forth. Winning or losing is in the upside down, but it is not absolute. High concentration is the key. Otherwise, the companion who besieged the opponent with you will leave a scar on your chest in a blink of an eye. Such a battle was also unprecedented for Logogu, and the heights he could reach were also unprecedented. How could I miss such a battle? There was a crescent moon rising faintly behind him, and the sword light was flying in his eyes. As he roared, the Mad Moon 131 style instantly rippled with thousands of sword marks, overwhelming towards Ace and Blackbeard. But in an instant, the two broke through the sword marks, surrounded by darkness and fire, and slammed Logogu hard. Pirate's Bounty: Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 167. Armed color domineering enveloped the whole body, and the originally pitch-black blade was smeared with darkness again. Flames and darkness shrouded at the same time. Logogu held the blade horizontally in front of him, a huge force crushed him, and swept his entire body flying backwards. The person suddenly flipped over in mid-air and plummeted to the ground. At the foot of the foot, the earth collapsed, the blade moved forward, his left hand opened, and the whole person instantly turned into a black light. Eclipse Moon Final Ceremony. Blackbeard, who was dealing with Ace, took a step back suddenly. His hands were darkly condensed, like a huge black plate in front of him. In the next second, without a sound, he quickly backed away. Along the way, countless burned and bald trees were smashed, sawdust flying, mud flying, and finally hit a boulder with a bang. Blood was sprayed from the mouth, and then raised his head. Logogu's blade penetrated 3 points into the darkness, but after all, he couldn't penetrate it completely. Thief, ha ha ha. All of a sudden, Blackbeard's right hand rolled darkly, and suddenly hit Logogu's face. Logogu drew back and flew back, but he only felt the scorching heat behind him like a sea of fire. Ace has caught up. Strike back and forth. There was no way to avoid it, but his whole body was suddenly torn apart, his hands, feet and head flying around. Blackbeard's attack instantly missed, and collided fiercely with Ace's flame. But at this moment, the hand holding the knife that Logogu flew out suddenly slashed at Highbeard's head. Blackbeard dodged sideways, and blood flowed across his shoulder for a moment. With a pause under his feet, the darkness rolled again, and Rogu's palm flew back, not allowing the darkness to envelop him, and the huge darkness suddenly erupted, swallowing Ace's flame. Immediately afterwards, the two separated at the same time. Luogu's feet were running on the ground like flying, and in the blink of an eye they had merged with Kikai's body, which had been pieced together, and reformed into a human form. The right arm returned, and in an instant, the figure disappeared directly in place. Silent step. In just a split second, he appeared behind Ace. But at the same time, the flames on Ace's body suddenly erupted. He turned his head, and rushed towards Luogu's face fiercely with his fist wrapped in flames. Luogu Zhan fell, and the fist wrapped in the arm domineering color was wrapped in the flames. This is a struggle of strength. In the end, no one could do anything about it. Before Blackbeard arrived, the two separated suddenly. Blackbeard jumped into the air, and the attack that landed with a crash almost made the entire island tremble. However, just when he raised his head, the two people who were still wrestling came to him at the same time. The blade is on the left, and the fire fist is on the right. Blackbeard's thief ha 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 laughter rose into the sky, and darkness suddenly spread, dark appointment. In an instant, Rogu and Ace activated their arm domineering chi at the same time, covering their whole bodies, and retreated immediately. As the darkness rolled, Luogu raised his head and saw the Blackbeard rushing towards him again. Immediately, his footsteps flashed and he started the silent step again. Three parties compete, each showing his or her abilities. As the battle progressed, the sun in the sky gradually set to the west. Dashiki and Mikita on the boat have already cleaned up two groups of pirates who rushed over. At this moment, the two are standing on the side of the boat, looking at the island full of danger everywhere, looking at each other, they are all worried. Mikita sighed, "Captain, you must be hungry, right?" Dashiki nodded deeply, his eating pattern is the most normal. He must be hungry at this time. Unfortunately, this battle can't be stopped just by saying it stops. I don't know how Luogu will feel when he hears what the two crew members say. But at this moment, his real feeling is, his blood is boiling. Every cell in his body seemed to be howling. There is a kind of joy that fills the whole body. With his sword swaying and the application of Zinuelio's swordsmanship, he faintly feels that Zinuelio's swordsmanship, which has been promoted to the 6th level and has broken through the original limit, is transforming. He needed a fight. And this battle in front of him can hone all his wisdom, fighting consciousness and swordsmanship to the peak. He wanted to use this to finally break through the limit and create the 5th move of Zinuelio's swordsmanship. Let the feeling in my heart that I can't spit out all the time, like a stick in my throat, rush out, let it drip freely. The whole night was spent in this frantic battle. The entire island almost exploded, and there were sword marks and scorched marks everywhere on the ground, and the fierce sword energy filled every corner of the surrounding area. Luogu was standing on a boulder at this time, panting lightly. The body that has been exercising for a long time can feel the huge consumption at this moment. In front of him on the left was Ace, who watched Luogu and Blackbeard vigilantly, and Blackbeard opened his mouth wide, panting heavily. Fighting is a very hard thing. What's more, the three people who have been fighting for a day and a night, and all of them are scarred. Luogu's body was left with burns and dark corrosion, and the scars caused by fists, feet, and claws were stained with blood. The jacket has long been torn apart, hanging on the body like a beggar. Ace's and Blackbeard's bodies were covered with various sword marks, blood seeping in and out, and the attacks on each other naturally left corresponding scars. The confrontation at this time is just a small break in the battle. They obviously have some understanding of physical fitness, and this tacit understanding, which is in urgent need of rest, was developed by the three of them at the same time. But, this is only temporary, maybe in the next second, someone suddenly feels that this is an opportunity to take advantage of. Then a sudden attack broke out. Then a new round of battle will begin again. But Blackbeard suddenly waved his hand and said, "Stop fighting, let's make peace. I really can't do it. There's no need for us to risk our lives like this." Ace gave him a cold look. "I will definitely take you back and let you apologize in front of Daddy." Luogu also nodded, "You are all bounties in my pocket, how could I let you run away like this? Thieves, ha 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 ha." Blackbeard laughed loudly, "Damn it. Don't you all understand what it means to take a step back? Do you really think I can't fight anymore?" The light in his eyes flashed, the next wave of attacks was crazy, and the huge darkness began to condense crazily. Dark Emperor. Darkness soared into the sky, forming a huge sphere of darkness. Ace's eyes seemed to be flickering with flames, and the condensed flames exploded in an instant, forming a monstrous sea of flames, gathering and dispersing into shape. Emperor Yan. There is no doubt that the crazy and dangerous feeling constantly oppresses the nerves of Luogu, the Dark Emperor with black beard, and the Yan Emperor of Ace. This is desperate. The tumbling sword moves repeatedly in his mind, and all the tempering in this battle reverberates wildly in his mind. The oppression of death stimulated every nerve in him, and suddenly, it was as if something burst in his mind. An unparalleled smoothness filled his whole body, and immediately after, the black pill fell from his hand. A few words spit out from the mouth, "Extreme meaning Moonfall." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 168. The ultimate spirit, the ultimate sword intent, the inspiration between life and death. The fifth style of Xinuelio's swordsmanship finally came out from Luogu's hands. In the confrontation between darkness and fire, the huge power that erupted instantly swept everything around. The clothes, which were already incomplete, were instantly torn apart, revealing the bare chest that had been trained to the extreme, and the black pill in his hand fell, but raised an indescribable brilliance. The brilliance of the moonlight sprinkles the sky and the earth, and in the confrontation between darkness and fire, it looks extraordinary and magnificent. Boom! With the first explosion, three forms of different energies burst out in an instant. Boom! The second explosion exploded, and the confrontation that unfolded was a moment of intense sword energy and flowing fire. Boom boom boom! There were continuous cracking sounds, and on the shore, the hunter's big boat was shaking. Dashiki and Mikita also stayed up all night, so they hurriedly watched closely. The scene in front of them was like a catastrophe of doomsday. The sea water near the coast was boiling, and with such a distance, it seemed that they would still be involved in the aftermath of this terrible battle. With a whoosh, Mikita had already ascended to the sky, and Dashiki's sword was unsheathed to resist the attack. In the distance, there are a few pirate ships that have been found. They have already seen the momentum before they approached. Without saying a word, they turned the bow and ran away. Although I don't know what happened on which island, but once they get close, they will be shattered in an instant. With their abilities, they can't even get close. There are clouds rolling in the sky, but they are hit by a huge force, straight up to the sky. There is sword energy transpiring like a moon, there is flame crit like burning, and there is darkness and inside like prison. But it swept everything in an instant, the dust of thousands of miles was swept away, and the world was clear for a while. When everything subsides, there is still a palpitating feeling on the island. Dusky and Mishita looked at each other and could see the worry in each other's eyes. This kind of battle is beyond their imagination. How is the captain now? It has to go to Saiki said. But the captain said. Mishita gritted her teeth before she could finish her words, let's go. Although Luogu asked them to wait here, but at this moment, how can they wait? The two people each jumped off the boat. Where they landed, the sea water was still warm, and all the way up, you could see rolling ground everywhere, filled with sword marks, scorched earth, and even covered in darkness. All the way forward, came to the deepest point. I saw 3 people standing still. Rogu's upper body clothes are all gone, and so is Blackbeard. Ace is better, he didn't wear it at all. Holding the sword in his hand, Luogu was still breathing. Seeing this scene, Dashiki and Makita breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. At least it can show that the captain is still alive. Looking at the other 2, one stood frozen, his eyes turned white, and he had obviously lost consciousness. And the other was watching them. Dashiki and Makita, Luogu's voice reached his ears. "Captain." The 2 people spoke in unison subconsciously. A smile appeared on Luogu's lips, and he looked at Blackbeard, who still maintained a certain vitality. "Is it okay?" "Thief, ha 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 ha, cough 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 cough." Halfway through the laugh, he coughed violently, blood spattered from his mouth, and the wounds on his body exploded at the same time. Luogu's last sword attack, extreme meaning Moonfall, brought more terrible trauma than he had imagined. After coughing for a while, he looked at Luogu with a smile. "What about you?" Luogu shook his head. "No, I can't move at all." "Then you are dead." "Yeah." Luogu nodded, "but before this happens, are you sure you're fine?" Blackbeard fell silent. "All of your men have been caught by me, and now you are standing here alone, probably like me, unable to move, right?" Ace lost consciousness. Such an impact is too cruel for him. At least with a sword, he has nothing." Having said this in one breath, Luogu gasped twice, and then said to Dusky and Mishita, "Hold me and go to Blackbeard's side." Without any hesitation, the 2 people immediately came to Luogu, supporting him one by one, and walked towards Blackbeard. Blackbeard glared angrily, "If you take one step closer, you will definitely die." Dashki and Mishita glanced at Luogu, who curled his lips and said, "Don't believe him. He wants to trick you into dying." Blackbeard said. However, these words could no longer be heard, and Makita and Dashiki didn't want to listen to him at all. In the end, until Luogu stood opposite him, he couldn't move. "It's too much to say that the oil is exhausted and the lamp is dry, but you are indeed powerless now." Luogu took a deep breath and suddenly said something that completely surprised Blackbeard. "Maybe there will still be a successor to the power of the dark fruit. But at least he won't be you." "You think?" Without saying a word, the next second, the sword's edge was like lightning. A huge head suddenly shot up into the sky. Blackbeard's eyes were still filled with disbelief. He never imagined that he would die in such a place. However, it finally fell to the ground with a plop, rolled a few times, and then stopped. The body fell heavily to the ground, and at the same time, the darkness that was originally brewing in the hands disappeared. As for Luogu, who cut out the sword, he completely ignored Goldfinger's prompting, and spurted out a lot of blood in one gulp. For him, this battle was of course tempering his spirit and body, and of course making his sword skills a step closer, but in the end he suffered a serious injury. Glancing at Blackbeard's hands, he shook his head. "Miscalculation, I never expected that I would not be able to restrain my fighting spirit. The mouth I left was originally to deliver supplies to us, but now it seems that it may push us to a desperate situation." Makita and Dashiki were still trapped in Blackbeard's death, thinking that their own captain wanted to use his ability to catch Blackbeard directly. But he didn't expect that he still had the power to kill. And he was decisive and beheaded him without saying a word. This ferocity exceeded their expectations. Then I saw Rogu pointing at Ace. "You two look at me, I look at you, do you still want to kill?" If the captain said he wanted to kill him, that's fine too. I had no choice but to help Luogu to come to Ace, thinking in my heart, why does the captain insist on doing it himself? But seeing that Luogu just stretched out his hand and patted Ace's body, the next second the iron chain flew across the sky, and in just a split second, it was tightly entangled. After doing this, Luogu finally couldn't hold it any longer, rolled his eyes, and lost consciousness. Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 169. When he woke up again, he felt that every muscle in his body was crying. This pain reminded him of the time when he first came to this world, being seriously injured and floating on the sea. But that time was actually better, because the wound was almost numb at that time, but it was not as good as it is now, as if thousands of awls were dancing on his body. It's my life. Luogu stretched out his hand and looked at the bandaged arm. Who made this? It's so ugly. He frowned, disgusted, but looked at the surrounding environment. It was his own room. So, still on board. The news brought out by the Bauhinia pirates will definitely attract many pirates. Could it be solved by the two of them? I was a little happy in my heart. The growth of the crew is also worth celebrating for the captain. Struggling to sit up from the bed, enduring the severe pain all over his body, he got out of bed, stood on the ground, took a deep breath, and felt that the wound was about to burst. This time, 1,000 enemies will be hurt, and 800 will be hurt. Recalling the details of the previous battle, he suddenly became excited again for no reason. This kind of pure fighting is what he likes. It's a pity that it's still irrational. If you stay rational and wait until their battle is over before rushing up, the current self should be sitting on the deck drinking wine, celebrating this time's victory, right? And wait for the arrival of the pirates, and then repair your own ship. Thinking about it this way, I feel that there seems to be nothing to be happy about now. It's just that this battle was finally won. Blackbeard was beheaded by himself, Ace was arrested, and everything was suspenseful. As for killing Blackbeard, Luogu had already thought about it from the very beginning. This man is too dangerous. The entire world is in turmoil, and his impetus is extremely important. Killing it now can save countless twists and turns in the future. However, is the world of pirates without Blackbeard still magnificent? He was inexplicably sad. In the final analysis, this battle can be won because they still consumed a certain amount of each other's physical strength in the beginning. Otherwise, judging from the final exhaustion of each other's physical strength, my end should be similar to Ace's. Blackbeard was not without the power of a single blow before he died. It's just that he wanted to take advantage of Luogu to take a step forward and wait for work. Unexpectedly, Luogu's determination was beyond his imagination, and he was not trying to catch him, but to kill him. There are two possibilities: if you guess wrong, you will pay the price of your life. Otherwise, with his ability, at that moment, the result of life and death might be reversed. And the reason why this person must be killed is that some secrets cannot be revealed. Does this count as me single-handedly erasing the war on top? After this, no one will reveal Ace's identity. It can be regarded as the last bit of attachment to you as a fan of the original book. From then on, it will be a pure hunter and pirate relationship. As for the possible consequences after catching Ace, Luogu never even thought about this kind of thing. Although Iron Fist Carp is scary, he is a navy after all. Shouldn't he thank himself for taking his grandson to prison and reforming him? After all, Whitebeard is still a pirate, and his own position is in conflict. Even if Ace is not caught, can he still have a drink with Whitebeard in the later stage? In the end, nothing will change. What will change is a boy wearing a straw hat, who will probably rush over and wave his soft fist at him. Well, I pumped it up and it's pretty hard. A smile appeared on the corner of Luogu's mouth. Then come. Stepping to the door, and just as he was about to open the door was opened. What caught my eye was Mishita. When she saw Luogu, she seemed to be stunned for a moment, then she said ah as if she had seen a ghost, turned around and ran out. Yao Xiao. The captain is awake. I don't know where I learned these nouns. Luogu's face turned dark. Was he so unpopular? After stepping out of the cabin and passing through the corridor, Luogu noticed that the big ship was already sailing on the sea. It's just that the weather is calm now, so that there is no slight bump. The sound of thumping footsteps came, and Dashiki and Makita had already arrived in front of them in a blink of an eye. Looking at Luogu, who had been wrapped into a mummy, Dashiki's eyes were red. "Captain, you finally woke up. We really can't find a doctor, so we can only bandage you with the medicine on the ship." Mishita also said, "You don't even know how miserable you are. You have countless burns all over your body, and there is also an erosion-like wound. Blood and thick water are mixed, and we help you clean it up every day." Luogu looked at the bandage all over his body without any dead ends, and suddenly froze for a moment. Then he blinked and turned around as if nothing happened. "Now, where are we?" "Do not know." The two answered confidently. Since listening to Ace and going to that small island, they have actually deviated from the correct route of the Great Route. There are no pointers to the surrounding islands, so we can only follow the instructions of the recorded pointers and move towards the next island. Luogu thought for a moment and said, "After arriving at the next island, if there is a town, you can disguise yourself and buy more supplies. In addition, take down the hunter's flag and temporarily erase the words on the sail. Before he regains his strength, he needs to disappear temporarily for a while. The purpose of being a pirate hunter is to make money, not to die." When the two girls heard this, they immediately understood. "But when I lowered the flag, I still felt a little reluctant." Makita stood under the flag every day and looked out, and she almost had feelings for the flag, and she almost didn't shed tears. Luogu asked about Blackbeard's head, and was relieved after learning that Mishita had put it away and had it embalmed. He earned million from the killing, and another million after sending the heads. Adding in Ace's billion, a total of billion was recorded. At this point, his mood finally improved a lot. After everything was tidied up, the flag was lowered, and the words were wiped off, Luogu's mood became even more beautiful. "Look at the sky is blue today, look at the sea, well, it is also very blue, blue sky and sea, and there are boats on the sea. So good." Luogu praised with satisfaction, "How great it would be if there wasn't that damn pirate flag on this ship." He took a sip of the soup Makita prepared specially for him, feeling somewhat sad. In the past, there were pirate hunters hanging around the market, but it was rare to see pirates. Now, less than half an hour after the flag was lowered and the writing was wiped, the pirates came to the door. Was it really the pirate flag? Pirate's bounty, don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 170. Luogu moved his hands and feet, feeling pain all over his body. But to say that it is completely powerless is not the case. Immediately sit still and wait quietly for the other party's arrival. As for what happens after the arrival, it depends on their own choice. Dashiki and Makita also noticed the pirate ship, and they all came to stand beside Luogu. "Captain, don't worry, we are here." Mishita patted her chest, her face full of confidence. She can't tolerate her lack of self-confidence. Recently, several groups of pirates came down, and they were all cleaned up by her and Daisuke. If it weren't for them, the ship would not be able to return to its current state, and would have sunk long ago. Daisuke was also a little eager to try. Luogu nodded, "I have grown up." When the captain was seriously injured, the most reliable person was the crew on board, and Luogu felt a little comforted in his heart. As the two ships got closer, Luogu could even see the pirates squatting on the side of the ship. "It's unavoidable." Luogu shook his head, and saw Daisuke suddenly took 2 steps back, while Makita flew into the air and was suspended on the sea. Luogu looked at this and that. Was he planning to perform a trick on himself? Before she could think about it, she felt a gust of wind hanging around her. Daisuke unleashed all her speed, and suddenly stepped on the side of the boat and jumped up. The huge impact driven by the speed made her jump out suddenly, followed grabbing the ankle of Mikita who was hanging in mid-air. Mikita exerted all her strength, coupled with Dashiki's speed blessing, they heard a buzzing sound, and the two of them reached the bow of each other's boat in the blink of an eye. And at this moment, Mikita couldn't hold on anymore. After adding Dashiki's weight, she simply couldn't maintain the state of being in midair for a long time. The reason why two people can travel such a long distance across the sea is mainly because of Dashiki's guidance. Mikita's biggest role is to maintain their height. It only takes a moment for the two of them to use Dashiki's guidance. Chi's speed, across the sea. Even Luogu didn't think of this point. This combination is a bit interesting. He blinked, and then he saw the pirate ship, and he was in a mess for an instant. Mikita's iconic, depthless laughter floated on the sea, and Dusky's sword flashed, but after a moment, the ship sank. The next moment, the two people returned to the hunter's ship in the same way as before. When they landed on the deck, they high-fived each other. Perfect. Luogu laughed twice. How cruel. Shaking his head, he felt a little sleepy again. I'll leave it to you, I'll go up and rest for a while. When I returned to the room, I really didn't have any extra time to deal with other things, so I lay on the bed and fell asleep. When I woke up again, I heard two whispering voices beside me. The meat here is about to grow. This wound is still early and will not heal in a short time. We don't have much wound medicine on board. It's hard for the captain to fully recover if he hasn't been in this state for a year or so. It's not that bad. If you find a doctor, you should be cured soon. It depends on the captain's recovery status. While speaking, Luogu felt that the bandages on his body were being lifted. This opened his eyes willingly and said that there was nothing he could do to save himself. In this state, it is too difficult for me to give myself medicine. But to say a year or so is obviously a bit too exaggerated. But it is estimated that there will be a delay of several months. I sighed and thought to myself, forget it, close your eyes and pretend to sleep, so as not to embarrass everyone when you open them. Well, looking at their heartless state, I guess the only one who is embarrassed is me. Close your eyes, stay still, and let these two women do whatever they want on their bodies. While poking this side, pointing to that side for a while, muttering endlessly. Luogu's spirit was already fatigued, and after listening to the chattering in his ears, he actually fell asleep after a while. And the next day, when he opened his eyes again, Luogu knew that he was in big trouble. He is sick. It might be that the wound was infected, or it might be because he was seriously injured and went out to blow the sea breeze yesterday. Anyway, when he opened his eyes today, he felt his mouth was dry and his throat was smoky. My mind was dizzy, like a piece of iron was pressed. Chiang struggled to open his eyes, the eyelids seemed to be weighted heavily. It rained all night because of the leak in the house. Luogu was a little speechless. If he had known that he would have woken up yesterday, he would not have gone out to complain. After thinking about it, I felt that I should really stop by the Drum Kingdom and bring the little reindeer back. The trouble is now that there is not even a doctor on board. He tried to open his eyes, but found that he couldn't open them at all. His eyelids were getting heavier and heavier, and the consciousness in his mind was getting more and more cloudy. Dimly, it seemed that he heard the sound of opening the door, and then the sound of hurried footsteps and calling, followed, but he couldn't hear anything. Luogu felt that he was going through a time travel. Occasionally, the spirit is uplifted, and I am in a clinic when I open my eyes, but before I understand it, I have already passed out. When I opened it again, I found that I was on a boat again. Dim and confused, I don't know how much time has passed. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in a room. A window of the room was opened, the breeze was blowing, the curtains were flying, and the sun shone into the room from the half window, which was extremely bright. Where is this? He rubbed his head, and felt that after waking up this time, The feeling of confusion in his mind disappeared a lot. He struggled to get up, but his arms and legs felt weak. If you encounter pirates in this situation, you really have no choice but to catch them without a fight. In a daze, the door was pushed open, and Mishita walked in carrying a basin. When she saw Luogu sitting up, the girl burst into tears. "Captain!" The almost broken voice made the glass buzz. Luogu only felt pain in his eardrums, and the next second, he watched the girl rushing over in horror. She hugged him and pressed him on the bed. Luogu was stunned. "What's going on?" "Captain, great, great, you are finally awake. Do you know that you have been asleep for a long time? How do you feel now?" She let go of Luogu and looked up and down his body. Luogu was breathing in but not out, and spoke with great difficulty. "I felt fine just now, but now I feel like I'm going to die." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 173. Era Allah, who is this? There was a hint of surprise in Ace's voice. "I didn't expect to be able to see you again. How have you been lately? I really miss you." The basement was dark. Luogu searched a bit, and turned on the light. Under the shroud of light, Ace closed his eyes subconsciously, and then saw Rogu's face. "You're too haggard." He was a little surprised. "Speaking of which, what have you done since I haven't seen you for so long?" "Well, it's nothing." Luogu smiled, healing. Ace looked at his state and sighed. "It seems that there is no way to sit down with you and talk." "He is lying down." Luogu nodded. "It must be very hard to maintain this state for a long time. Sorry, you will be relieved soon." "You're going to kill me?" "No, I'll send you to prison," Luogu said with a smile. "Although the Navy has never tolerated pirates, they will not impose more torture on those who have already been caught. And for a dangerous guy like you, as long as make sure you don't run away, and you probably won't be abused more often." "Who knows?" Ace looked at the top of his head. "It seems that we won't be able to see the sun in a short time." "I'll see you." After Luogu finished speaking, silence seemed to remain. After a moment of silence, Luogu shook his head. "Next time, don't trust others too easily." "I never believed you," Ace corrected. Luogu nodded. "I know, I didn't mean that." Ace frowned. "What do you mean?" Luogu smiled. "It's nothing, everything is over." "Do you think that if you go to prison, will someone come to save you?" "What do you want to do?" "Set up a net at the prison gate. I think there will be a lot of gains," Luogu said with a smile. "Of course." Ace nodded. "You're a bad student." Luogu couldn't help but laughed. "Think about it carefully. If it is the person who saves you, most people definitely don't have that ability, and they can even ignore the Navy. I am a little kid. What can a small hunter do? The purpose of casting the net is to catch fish, not to be killed by fish. Fishermen will be very happy if they catch big fish, but if they catch a sea king, they will be desperate." Ace sighed. "Having achieved such a huge victory, how can you still maintain such a calm mind?" "Because the price of this victory is greater than imagined." Luogu stood up. "Okay, I'm relieved to see that you are still healthy." He looked at the others. The two pirates, Blackbeard's subordinates, were also there. In fact, Luogu didn't have any attachments to Blackbeard's subordinates. He didn't care if they were there or not. Anyway, the one with the highest value among them is also a drug addict, and the value of the others is quite different. Shaking his head, he turned and went out. "You won't really have nothing to eat today, will you?" Ace asked. "Of course not." Luogu smiled. "I'm kidding you." Ace nodded, and then suddenly felt something was wrong. Which sentence was teasing him? "I have food" or "I have no food"? This bastard. After meeting Ace, the rest of the day was easy. Recuperate, recover, and then nothing else. And after the pain on the body was removed, the recovery of the injury became faster and faster. But in just 3 days, the wounds on his body have basically healed completely. In terms of fighting, basically there is no problem. So after that, Rogu took Ace and others to the Navy division in exchange for a large bounty. However, he didn't make such a big move like in the past. Instead, he went through layers of cover, and finally left the Navy branch quietly with the money. As for what kind of disputes and chaos the Navy branch will cause because of his appearance, Ace's arrest, and Blackbeard's head, that's not what Rogu wants to care about. Then one more thing happened. After careful consideration, Daisuke decided to stay temporarily. On the one hand, she was reluctant to leave Logogu and Makita, but on the other hand, she hoped to get more experience. When she returns to the Navy in the future, she will have stronger abilities and can truly realize her persistence in justice. For this, Logogu praised her. Then there's moving. Many of the previous things actually left a lot of flaws. After Ace and the others were sent to the Navy division, it was easy for those who cared to find them. It was so easy to make such a big deal. Logogu also planned to rest for 2 days, and didn't want to deal with pirates or the Navy for the time being. So after going through layers of camouflage, Logogu directly changed his face, changed his appearance, and went to another location to directly buy a manor. This is the first time he has bought property for himself since he made so much money. It cost him nearly $1 million. It's impossible to say that it doesn't hurt when you buy it, but after buying it, he feels it's worth it. But the ensuing problems have resurfaced. It's impossible for only the 3 of them to take care of such a big manor. There must be a servant. When scheduling servants, you can't do everything yourself, right? There must be a butler. With the butler to help you further plan carefully and carefully. You have to have a car when you go out, whether it's a carriage or something else, you have to have one. You can't wear clothes randomly, right? Have to buy new ones. You still have to buy it. Logogu, who was tossing and turning, felt as if he had fallen into a pit. After that, the place to spend money seems to have increased all of a sudden. This kind of thing will never be done in the future. On the semi-open balcony, Logogu was holding a glass of red wine, watching the night under the starry sky, couldn't help swearing while gnashing his teeth. As for this house, well, just keep it. He thought about it, if he hadn't found a way to go home after taking the risk to the end. Then find a place to retire. This city is really big, very prosperous, and more suitable. Then he looked at his hunter pass. Hunter qualification certificate. Bearer, Naris Ragu. LV6 LV5 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 LV1 LV5 LV5 LV5. Coins, black iron coin 15 gold coin 2. Bailey, 676500000 can be withdrawn. Fallen keys, 3. I made a big ticket, added up all the parts, sold the pirates on the ship, bought this manor, and distributed it to the 2 crew members as dividends, but still bought 2 gold coins. In general, this ticket it's still worth it. However, looking at the golden coin, Logogu was lost in thought. Would you like to try again on Zinueliu? Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 174. Under the moonlight, the sky is filled with stars. Logogu looked at the 2 gold coins in the hunter certificate and fell into thought. Money is not easy to come by, especially in this battle, the sacrifice is huge. Once you fail to improve your Zinueliu swordsmanship, the loss will be too great. Gently knocked on the forehead, and finally smiled, this kind of entanglement is really not suitable for me. With a slight movement of his finger, a gold coin was consumed quietly, but it was not the increased Zinueliu but the huge force. The integration of information is not huge, but the huge tearing force spreads all over the body in an instant. Every single muscle, every muscle, was pierced by huge force in an instant, and the pain went all over the body in an instant. This feeling comes and goes quickly, the pain is only for a moment, and after a moment, it is as sweet as drinking fine wine. He looked at his hands, the blue veins hadn't healed yet, and they were exuding bursts of heat, as if he hadn't been upgraded just now, but had been steamed in a steamer. My physical fitness has been forcibly improved again. Is it because I can't bear the 6th level of strength now? After integrating the information, he exhaled softly. If I had the 6th level of strength at that time, it wouldn't be so hard at all. However, it is obviously meaningless to say this now. Looking at a gold coin in the hunter certificate, he shook his head and decided to stay temporarily. Since you are a little undecided, then make a decision slowly in the future. Then there's the matter of the key to the fall. Will you continue to extract Sand Crocodile's abilities? Still waiting a moment. Because now in this brand new prison cell, there is a brand new character Ace. How terrifying the ability of Fire Fist Ace is, he has already experienced this himself. But if this happens, it is inevitable that he will have to capture a few more people to share a cell with Ace. Because Ace happened to be in the latest cell, and now he is the only one in this cell. If you don't make up 5, there is no way to draw a lottery. Just wait a minute. Think carefully about what he got in that cell in Crocodile. Painting, ballet. Just a nightmare. The devil fruit ability of the Sand Crocodile does not mean to be extracted at all. Why don't you try again? He looked at the cell, and finally stretched out his finger and pointed it up. The speed of light circulation is actually not fast, but it stops for no reason. When Luogu came back to his senses, his pupils shrank suddenly. Because the light just shrouded Crocodile's head, this was the first time. Chose from Crocodile for the first time. What are skills? Skill acquired, sand body. I was slightly startled, it's not a shasha fruit. The next second, while the information was integrated into his mind, subtle power also began to act on his whole body. However, this is not the same as raising any skill to level 6. It's so easy that you don't feel much difference. After coming back to his senses, Luogu's expression was a little strange. The body of sand turns out to be like this. It is not the ability of the rustling fruit, but a certain ability of this fruit. The sand body, to put it simply, means that at critical moments, you can make your body elemental. This itself is a natural devil fruit, and it can almost be called a universal ability. The elemental body is immune to slashing attacks, so only attacks covered by armed color haki can be effective. Luogu's sand body is such an ability. When needed, the body can be sanded to avoid physical damage. This skill is currently only level 0.2, and the decertification time is only seconds. Without the slightest hesitation, he raised it to level 5 with a black iron coin, and the body of sand lasted for 1 second. Although this ability is short-lived, if used properly, it will be life-saving. Luogu nodded silently in his heart, feeling that this harvest is not bad. Although I didn't get all the abilities of the shasha fruit, who said that what I extract is all the abilities? The ability that Bucky could extract before was to be broken into pieces, and the expressive power of his fruit lay in this. Speaking of which, if the abilities of these natural fruits are extracted in the future, they won't all be just one of the abilities. He pondered in his heart that this possibility was extremely high, and he was a little speechless for a while. He felt that his role in the fall was further reduced. Not to mention some inexplicable skills, he can't extract all the abilities of the natural devil fruit. This time he was lucky enough to draw a sand body, and the next time he draws a desert sword or something, it is completely meaningless to him. Up. Black Maru is not a decoration. Thinking of this, he sighed silently. Under the moonlight, he poured himself another drink, looked up again, and saw a fire in the distance. Firelight. Luogu was stunned for a moment. In this water city, even if you want to catch fire, it's probably not that easy. The moment his curiosity arose, he hesitated and stood up. Looking at the face in the mirror, the next second, the whole face suddenly distorted and changed its appearance. It shouldn't be too much of a problem to use the stranger's face to see the excitement. Taking advantage of the opportunity, he changed another set of clothes, and then he came to the balcony again, jumped down, and within a few ups and downs, he was already close to the fire. I casually jumped on the wall, stood there and watched, and saw a large group of people busy helping to put out the fire. Luogu shook his head. Is it just a simple fire? Otherwise, I will go and help. Just as he was about to go down and see if there was anything he needed to do, he suddenly noticed someone. The man was kneeling on the ground, with blood on his forehead, and was listening to another person very intently. There is no need to look carefully, because there are 4 lines of words on her body. Nami. Luogu muttered, the straw hats are here too. I've been so busy these days, I really don't pay enough attention to the surrounding situation. However, when he saw these 2 people, he suddenly thought of one thing. How do you feel about this scene? It seems like I have seen it somewhere before. Turning his head, he didn't find Luffy and Lucci. He hesitated a little and turned to another place. If my guess is correct, that place should have been temporarily blocked at this time. As he walked, he pondered, if this is the case, then your choice of my collaborator will remain the same as before. Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 175. The station is located in the back street, not too far from here. When Luogu arrived, he was not surprised to find that the place had indeed been blocked. It is not difficult to sneak in, at least for Luogu. There is almost no difference between this level of blockade and no blockade. He found a secluded place to stand. He didn't know whether it was fate or not. Anyway, he happened to see Robin slowly walking into the station surrounded by a group of people. No resistance, no struggle. Tut-tut. Luogu curled his lips. Is it still the same as before? The Straw Hats have magical powers, and Luogu firmly believes in this. Now Robin's choice should still be the same as before: let himself bear everything alone, negotiate terms with CP9, and finally trade himself for the life of his companions. That's it if it's worth being moved. He thought for a moment and sighed. As a pirate hunter, this kind of thing really shouldn't fall under my jurisdiction, but who makes you, a woman, so important? Turned and left the station, onto the street. He casually took out a pen and paper from his jacket pocket. This thing is probably necessary for a gentleman. He wrote 2 sentences on it, which read, I'm going out for a while, you guys take a good look at the house and wait for me to come back. After finishing writing, I folded it up, found a vagrant who hadn't returned late at night, and delivered it to my house, and told him, if you deliver it, you can get 100 Baileys. The kid didn't hesitate and sprinted straight towards his destination. Luogu smiled, tilted his head and thought for a moment, if I give him money directly, will he just accept the money and do whatever he wants? Well, I always like to use this. It's really not good to speculate on others from a malicious perspective. Sighing, he turned around and walked into the station again. When Luogu arched the door, he happened to see a blond young man with a cigarette in his mouth, wearing a helmet there. Familiar curly eyebrows. The last time we met, it seemed to be in the restaurant on the sea. His demeanor looks a little different. Luogu was silent for a while, and took a detour, not wanting to meet them. As for this trip, he also thought about it and felt that he really had no reason to go against the world government. If it really doesn't work, save Robin, and let the rest go. As for Robin's choice, it's up to her. Luogu didn't intend to force anything on this point. As long as the partners are still safe, Many things will have future possibilities. If the collaborator dies, the natural future is dark. But those guys will probably come and make the whole judiciary island a mess. Luogu touched his chin. I always feel like I can watch this big show. From the moment he came to this world to now, he has always been the one having fun here, especially the scene with Blackbeard and Ace. The fun was huge and the whole world was watching. However, this world is full of waves and waves, but there is not much fun for myself to watch. This made Luogu very sad. This time it was a pity to erase it. No one's viewing platform could be closer to the real One Piece than this time. Hiding behind the wall, he abducted a man in a black suit and knocked him unconscious. After watching his face for a while, it suddenly distorted and turned into the appearance of this person. After changing his clothes again, he threw the person into an empty wine barrel, and Luogu walked out swaggeringly, following the original team. This group of people moved forward all the way, and soon came to the sea train, lined up and got on the train. After getting on the train, Luogu followed them and found a place to sit down, by the window, watching the sea breeze outside, and listening to the sound of the waves beating on the train. He was suddenly a little worried. Speaking of it, I seem to remember this scene. There was a huge tsunami, water gods, etc. My newly bought house wouldn't be directly washed away. Moreover, after such a disaster, this house wouldn't be depreciated. My heart suddenly began to tangle with inexplicable things. Someone next to him called an unfamiliar name. Luogu turned around and knew it was him. While talking nonsense with the people around me, I mainly conduct in-depth discussions on issues such as the horror of the devil's son, the ferocity of the pirate, and the greatness of the chief. In fact, apart from meaningless flattery and self-expression, there is no other topic worthy of in-depth discussion. The group of people didn't stop until the train set off at 11:30. In this way, after another period of time, Luogu stood up from the chair and began to look for Robin from car to car. No one doubted his identity, which probably meant that the guy who was knocked unconscious had not been discovered until now. Very pitiful. Luogu sighed, opened the door of a section of the carriage, and saw a woman sitting there, thinking about a problem in a posture that Luogu looked familiar to. When he came to her, Luogu tilted his head and looked at her. After watching for about 30 seconds, the woman suddenly woke up from a dream, raised her head and looked at Luogu. "What are you doing?" Her tone wasn't very good, but she wasn't very angry either. It was just calm, with a dead silence that could see through everything. "Nothing. Let's see what's so special about a woman who has been on the run for 20 years. Luogu sat opposite her, saw that there was something to drink on the table, and poured her a glass. "When you enjoy something, don't be too picky." Robin frowned and looked at Luogu. "Your commander asked you to come, are they already so impatient?" "Why can't you wait?" Luogu smiled. "Speaking of which, have you turned white recently?" Logically speaking, in a place like Sky Island, so close to the sky, shouldn't the ultraviolet rays be very strong? Doesn't that thing also have the function of protecting the skin? Robin was dumbfounded. Why does this guy know that he just came back from the empty island? She tilted her head and looked at Luogu. "Who are you?" Luogu sighed, his face distorted in an instant, returning to its original appearance, but it was only for a moment, and it changed back in the next second. He shook his head. "It's really sad, you won't really forget me, right? I miss you, but it's like the sea outside, endless." "Why, I will see you here." Robin rubbed his eyes, feeling that he was probably dreaming. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 176. You can interpret this as an adventure. Luogu smiled and said, "After all, in this world, anything can happen." So, it's really you? Robin looked at Luogu in disbelief. After all, this kind of thing was too much of a coincidence. How could I meet Luogu so casually? I don't believe it. Luogu scratched his head. This is a bit difficult to handle. Speaking of which, there should be a piece of historical text on the empty island. Don't forget it if you have gained something. The two of us are collaborators. If you gain anything, don't forget to tell me. It's something you're not interested in, Robin said. Forget it. Luogu looked out the car window. If there is anything I am interested in, don't forget to share it with me. In return, I will also ask you to help me translate the historical text I found. It's a kind of sharing, right? It's really you. Hearing what Luogu said, Robin finally had no doubts anymore. Why are you here? Well, that's a good question, Luogu said. First of all, I'm here to heal my injuries. Recuperate. Robin was stunned. Seeing her expression, Luogu nodded. So, you probably haven't paid much attention to the news recently. Really didn't pay much attention to what happened? Robin asked. Since I don't know, I won't tell you. At least at this stage, it has nothing to do with you, Luogu said with a smile, but it's hard to say in the future. I will probably be tortured by your captain. I hate it so much. Robin was baffled. Luogu waved his hand. Let's talk about it now. How is it? Do you want to leave? Robin was silent. Luogu waited quietly, and when the teacup was empty, he sighed. It seems that I have already got the answer. Robin smiled slightly. Luogu stretched out his hand. Congratulations. Yeah, Robin was confused. Congratulations, you have found the meaning of living. Luogu said with a smile, to be able to make you care so much about life and death, they must be very good people. You knew already? It's not a secret. Luogu glanced at the carriage behind him. They talk about it so much that I don't even know what to say. Okay, Robin said, if that's the case, then you can go. Luogu nodded. Of course, starting a war with the Navy is not what I should do. But how about I tell you a little secret? Robin frowned and looked at Luogu, very annoyed by his half-said and tantalizing way of speaking. Luogu grinned. There are a few of your friends on the boat. They will probably know soon why you made such a choice and what the consequences will be. You know them better than me, so, you know what they will do. Robin opened his mouth, and sweat was visible to the naked eye. Seeing Luogu stand up and prepare to leave after saying this, she quickly grabbed Luogu's sleeve and said, wait a minute. Luogu looked back at her. Help them, Robin said. Please don't let them come to save me, let them leave here, let them live. Luogu sighed after hearing this. Do you think they are the kind of guys who are willing to listen to others' advice before turning around and leaving before completing their goals? I think you probably have something to do with your companions. Misunderstanding. Robin was speechless for a moment. The man in front of me is right. They are not the kind of people who can give up on themselves just by saying a few words. Her eyes suddenly turned red, she lowered her head, and big tears fell on the table. Idiots are all idiots. Luogu glanced at her and smiled slightly. Don't say that, I'm actually curious about what they can do. But it's too much for you to let me be a hunter and help pirates. Even if it's from my own standpoint, it is impossible for me to do such a thing. However, for the sake of my collaborators, I can at least promise you one thing. Robin looked up at Luogu. Luogu smiled and said, as far as possible, I will let them live. Robin's eyes flashed. Really? Why should I lie to you? Luogu said with a smile. If they really successfully rescued you, your net worth will definitely increase. As long as I consider that they will eventually become my bounty, I feel extremely happy. So happy, so brisk, and faster than the sea train. But I won't let you catch them. I believe. Luogu nodded. The relationship between collaborators and partners is also divided into priorities. This is easy to understand. but the identity of the collaborators remains unchanged. If one day I want to arrest them, then it is up to me. I don't need you to provide me with any information. What do you think? I don't know. You don't need to understand too much, Luogu said with a smile, and this time, even if it is a close encounter, forget it, let's leave first. Although there is no one in this carriage, there is an unexpected, it's quite depressing. Turning around, putting one hand in his pocket, he came to the door of the carriage in a blink of an eye, and walked out. Robin watched quietly for a long time, finally took a deep breath, and looked out the window with a tangled expression. After Luogu left Robin's carriage, he walked a few more sections, and then came to a warehouse-like place. There were two people drinking at the bar, but they didn't take it seriously when they saw Luogu. Luogu glanced at them and then focused on the two sacks on the ground. The sack is also wrapped around and around. It's really a bit excessive. Luogu found it a bit funny. These two guys were tied up like caterpillars. One was Frankie and the other was Usopp. It is worth mentioning that Usopp's injured nose really gave the bandage a lot of room to play. Just looking at Ellie, the door of the carriage was opened. A blond youth with curly eyebrows made his debut. Luogu copied his pockets with both hands and found a random place to sit down. The two young men on the stage immediately turned around. The young man was stunned. Are they twins? The battle started in an instant and ended in an instant. Almost in the blink of an eye, the two of them were already hanging from the ceiling. Luogu nodded lightly, feeling that he would probably never be able to learn that wonderful kicking skill in his lifetime. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 177. Of course, if you catch this guy and whip him desperately, you might actually be able to draw him, then of course that's a different matter. Rogu watched him hang two agents from the ceiling, and watched him quarrel with Frankie. It's as if there is no such person as Luogu. Just when Luogu was about to have self-doubt, a strong wind hit. Whoops! He stepped a little bit, moved away silently, and appeared at the other end of the carriage in a blink of an eye. The young man raised one foot and turned to look at Luogu. Luogu breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that I am still there. Then he looked at Sanji with a smile. If I guessed correctly, you were going to hit me just now. Sanji's curly hair jumped twice. Is there any problem with hitting you? Luogu asked again. Why? Sanji was speechless. What's the reason for this? If you catch your partner, it's normal for you to get beaten by yourself, right? Luogu pointed at the two people on the ground and said, first, I didn't attack you, and second, I didn't stop you from doing anything you wanted to do. Why should I be beaten by you? You are not one of them. Sanji thought of a possibility, but thought it was impossible. The clothes this guy was wearing were obviously those of an agent. Luogu said with a smile, never mind this, I just want to know why you hit me if I didn't stop you. Crazy Usopp was also dumbfounded. We are enemies. Is it really okay to distinguish between ourselves and the enemy so easily? Luogu shook his head. In other words, you are so sure that you must be my enemy. Sanji smiled coldly and was about to speak when he suddenly heard Usopp say, no, how about we be friends? Really? Luogu seemed a little hesitant, but your partner wants to hit me. He won't hurt you again, really, Usopp said seriously. But just looking at this guy's face, it's hard to believe what he said. Luogu raised his eyebrows. Really? But, he hasn't apologized for hitting me yet. Why should I apologize? Sanji was furious. Shut up, Sanji. Usopp said loudly, apologize quickly. Sanji's face turned dark and he glared at Usopp, only to find that Usopp's face was serious. Although I don't know why, but considering that Usopp should not let himself do this without a reason. He took a deep breath and said, I'm sorry. Luogu picked his ears. I sincerely apologize. Why is the voice so low? Sorry. Sanji roared angrily. He had already apologized, louder or softer, it was no big deal, I was wrong, I shouldn't have hit you. Luogu nodded with satisfaction. It turns out that this is really a sincere apology, so can we really be friends? Of course, we must be good friends, Usopp said. In short, I, Usopp, and you. Speaking of this, he was a little stuck, he didn't know Luogu's name. Luogu smiled and said, you can call me Guluo. Okay, I, Usopp, and you, Guro, are true friends in this sea. We can live and die together. No one can hurt my friends. Luogu said with satisfaction, well, if that's the case, then I, Guluo, and Usopp are best friends. No one can hurt you in front of me. After finishing speaking, he came to Usopp and untied him. Friend, why did you turn into a caterpillar? Usopp was stunned for a moment, then looked at Frankie next to him. He looked a bit like a caterpillar. He patted his chest and said, my friend, you don't know the reason for this. I, Usopp, am the big one. The man at sea is doing something very important, so now it's all just a disguise. Luogu nodded deeply, so that's it, let me tell you a secret. What secret? Usopp asked. Actually, what I'm doing now is also a disguise, Luogu said. I also have some unimportant things to do, so the necessary disguise is necessary. Therefore, I really, and other people in this car, not a gang. It was so. Usopp said, my friend, are you willing to help me complete that important thing? Of course, we are friends after all, Luogu said with a smile. Then what is the important thing you said? Usopp looked at Sanji, who was completely surrounded. Are these two psychopaths getting together? However, now that things have happened, it seems that this guy does not have any ill intentions and is a bit of an idiot. Immediately frowned and said, in short, let's get in touch with Ms. Nami and the others first. There was a phone bug next to him, he took one and put it away, while Luogu took the other. Sanji glanced at him, and Rogu smiled and said, good friends, one for each. Sanji has a black face. Who the hell is your friend? Isn't your good friend Usopp? But I dare not talk nonsense, my kick was dodged by this guy just now, it can be seen that this guy's strength is not weak. Usopp finally became friends with him. Well, it was really hard. If because of the problem of speaking, there is an unpleasant scene in the end, it will add more twists and turns. Taking the phone bug, several people left the current carriage, turned over and went directly to the roof of the carriage. Sanji wanted to call Nami, and Rogu also made a call. Ship boss. Dashki's voice was filled with astonishment, where are you now? Luogu smiled, glanced at the people behind him who were talking on the phone, and said with a smile, I am on the sea train, preparing for a great adventure with my friends. Dashki felt that her boss seemed to be sick. I didn't know what to say for a moment, so I heard Luogu say, I won't have any problems. Have you received the stuff? Ah. Just do what the note says, and wait for me to go back. Okay, Dashki nodded, and the call was cut off. Then he went to listen to Sanji and their call, and heard Nami's voice explaining Robin's affairs in this way. Simply put, because the demon-slaying order. CP9 has the authority to kill demons once, in order to prevent the terrifying power that wiped out O'Hara from falling on his companions. So Robin sacrificed himself in exchange for the lives of his companions. The so-called betrayal before was all for them to survive. This kind of truth inspired the determination of Sanji and others, and also got Luffy's approval. Let's make a scene according to your wishes. Luogu listened, looked up at the sky, there was rain falling, turned around, entered the interior of the train, and walked forward.